Hello and welcome back to the Metropolitan Culture Corner. We are back from our winter break and we are starting the 2026 season with a very special guest. Nando Cruz has been a music journalist since the late 1980s. He has contributed to everything from specialty music magazines such as Rockdelux to mainstream newspapers like El Diario, El Periodico, and from regional television programs to local radio broadcasts. And in recent years, he has become known, even infamous, for his passion for shining the light on musical realities, often marginalized by mainstream culture and mainstream media, through his feature section Otros Escenarios Posibles, in English, Other Possible Stages, in the newspaper El Periodico, and in his program for Betevé, 10,000 Bonfires is the translation in English. If I try to say it in Catalan, I'm going to say it wrong. Nando is also the author of half a dozen books, the most recent of which is titled Microfestivales y Otros Escenarios Posibles, Microfestivals and Other Possible Stages, published by Silex Ediciones, which was a follow-up to his penultimate book, Macrofestivales el agujero negro de la música, which attracted quite a bit of attention. The translation of that title is Macro Festivals, the Black Hole of Music. I like that this guy's got his ideas clear. You know what I mean? I will let Nando explain why that book attracted so much attention, why these topics are important, not only for musicians, but for music fans, for everybody and anybody who's part of the local scene, for everyone and anyone who lives in the city. Nando is one of these rare professionals who always brings a lot of passion to his work and always has a reason for everything that he does, everything he says, everything he writes. So I was very happy that he agreed to do this interview with me, especially as it's the first interview of the year. Thank you for tuning in. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show, and welcome Nando Cruz to the Metropolitan Culture Corner. Welcome to the Metropolitan Culture Corner. I'm happy to see you on the screen. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm good. This is the first interview of the year, so I'm excited. So I want to start at the beginning. As someone who now writes books, is a music journalist, and writes about music, what kind of books did you read growing up and what kind of music did you listen to? What came first, the journalism or being a fan?
The two things that I love the most are writing and listening to music. I knew that when I was a kid, like 13, 14 years old, I knew that those two things were the most exciting things for me. So the idea of becoming a music journalist, meaning somebody who writes about music, was like the perfect job for me. So both things came. Well, probably at the beginning, I was more interested in cinema, in movies, writing about movies. But then I went to a concert and I was like, wow, this is much better than watching a movie sitting. More things are happening when you are at live shows. I decided to focus on writing about music, something I've been doing for more than 30 years now.
So it really was the plan from the beginning.
Yeah, when I was 18, I was decided to be a music journalist. But when I was 12, I've already decided to be a journalist. Not a music journalist, but a journalist, yeah.
Because you like telling stories.
And that's the funny thing. There was a TV series in Spain called Lou Grant. Obviously, it was popular in the US because it was an American. And it was a journalist that was trying to do good, to fight against things that were not fair. And then at the beginning of the 80s, there was these movies about war journalism, war journalists that went to Vietnam or wherever. And I was like, oh, that's a good way to work for good things, but not having guns. You can work for a better society without having to shoot anybody. Just explain what you see and nobody wants to write about. So that was the beginning. And then I finally ended up being a music journalist, which is a more comfortable job instead of going to wars. But in a way, I still try to use my job for more than just saying, I like this record, I don't like that record. With music journalism, you can also try to make things better for musicians, for the audience. The music industry can also be a war, a battlefield. So in a way, I'm doing things comparable to what war journalism is like, but in a more comfortable position, obviously.
I know that a lot of articles and books and interviews and things you do, they do mix music and also a social aspect or a social angle or something about how the culture ties into society. So for you, what makes a good story? Like what makes you want to tell a story, whether it's about a musician or about something else?
The easy answer could be a good story, something I don't know anything about, so I can learn a lot and then I get excited to explain explain this story. That could be the short way to answer that. But I don't think about good or bad stories. I think about interesting places or interesting collectives that try to put musicians on stage. And also going back to that idea of trying to be like a counterpart for the official story, stories that other newspapers are not talking about. One writer in Barcelona said the problem with the music journalism in Spain is that the 97% of journalists are going to the 3% of concerts. I don't think that's exaggerated. I think the most part of music journalists are going to the same places. So there's great music that's happening around that nobody cares about or nobody wants to write about. I wouldn't say nobody cares about, because there are people in all these places, but nobody writes about that. So that's a good reason to go try to write a story.
And is that what started your fascination, I would say, because it's a very deep interest? Is that what started your interest in the underground scene and alternative spaces, microfestivals, and all these different non-mainstream ways of presenting music?
Yeah, I thought I was interested in underground scene 20 or 25 years ago, but in fact I was interested in just one part of the underground scene, because the underground scene is not one thing. It's a field of different circuits, different venues, different kinds of music, different ways of putting up a show, and I was just focusing on one. So I spent like my 21st years of music journalism going mainly to the same places and listening to the same kind of music until that point of where you feel like in the show The Truman, you know, the Truman Show, that Jim Carrey movie, you think your life is different every day, but it's the same because you're going to the same places. I mean, I was going to the venues and I knew exactly what kind of people I would meet and which point of the venue, in which corner of the venue I would meet other journalists. So it was more or less always the same. So I started thinking, well, there must be other places in Barcelona. There must be other musicians, other kinds of music, other neighborhoods with clubs. And then I started this obsession of knowing all these different places and going to a suburb of Barcelona or even outside Barcelona at 2 a.m. in the outskirts of the outskirts of the outskirts of a city which is not Barcelona, 30 miles away from Barcelona, and then opening a door and finding like 400 people dancing to a brass band from Chile. You open that door, it seems like you're at another planet outside the Truman Show in a way.
Outside the mainstream rock.
Absolutely outside, which doesn't mean it will be a venue with just 4 people. Sometimes there are 400, but there are 400 persons outside, not the mainstream, but what everybody considers the official circuit of music in Barcelona.
I remember when we've had a conversation before about your series of articles that you wrote that was the Otros Escenarios Posibles, the other possible stages, and you mentioned you weren't sure if you would be able to find enough places, enough venues to fill a series of articles, but in the end you found hundreds. So for people who maybe aren't involved in the music scene or aren't able to go out and see a lot of events, but maybe they love music, what are some examples besides this one that you just mentioned?
When I offered this series of pieces for my newspaper, I just asked them, let me do this just for a year, okay? 50 weeks, once a week, 50 venues. I think I will be able to find it. 6 months later, I had a list of 200 places I'd like to visit. Oh. Now I could do a piece every week for probably 600 weeks without repeating the place, because when you break this idea of a music space can be something more than just a music venue, then your mind opens and you start finding music places everywhere meaning the forest, where 6 trombone players meet there to rehearse and sometimes to play, meaning an occupied place, meaning a church, one of the first and more ancient music places ever, meaning a boat. I wrote a piece about a musician that rented a boat, invited 200 persons, and he played a show when the boat was sailing around Barcelona, meaning private club for cannabis smokers. The circuit in Barcelona of cannabis smoking, maybe 10, 15 places where they play music, sometimes DJing, sometimes playing live, meaning an atelier of ceramic, a workshop where people do ceramic, but once a week they have an open space where people can play live.
Are these places where people play for free, for fun, or are these places where the artists are also paid for performing?
Every example is different, but most of them have a ticket price. So I understand that ticket goes to the musicians. Obviously, many of these spaces are spaces where not always musicians get what they deserve, but music clubs sometimes are, official music clubs are not also places where musicians get what they deserve. In fact, they have to pay to play. Most of these places, musicians don't have to pay for playing. They get money.
Which is how it should be. Yes. Are there styles of music that seem to lend themselves more to these events? Like in your book, your most recent book about the Microfestivales and Otros Escenarios Posibles, there were these block parties you mentioned that are happening in Llobregat and other Catalan towns, and they seem to be focused a lot on hip-hop and urban music, but are there also events around Barcelona or the surrounding area that are different diverse styles of music? What did you find?
I wanted to find the most diverse styles of music because a city with 1.5 million inhabitants, 5 venues cannot show the variety of music styles that are in a city. The only way to represent all the music styles in a city with people from 150 different countries is to have lots and lots and lots of places. So the Colombian community knows that there are 5, 7, 8 places where they can play and they can meet. The salsa community or the fans of cumbia know which other places to go. But in Barcelona, you can find gigs. Chinese young rappers. They're not from China. They are born here, but their roots are in China. So you can go to a place and find 200 guys from Barcelona, but with Chinese families at a show where 2 or 3 rappers are rapping in Chinese. Every person or every community living in a big city like Barcelona or Berlin or whatever, at a certain point, they're just trying to survive. But then when they know how to live in the city and they have a job and they more or less stable in that place, then the next thing they do is, okay, I need some place where music from my roots is being played because I need contact with my city, and music is a good tool to reconnect with your roots. So people from Pakistan, people from China, from wherever are trying to find a place where they can reconnect with their music. But also people interested in rockabilly, they need a place to meet, and people interested in folk music from Galicia, they need a place, and people crazy about doo-wop or crazy about punk, dark, whatever, they need a place. So all these music styles sooner or later will find a place, and sooner or later journalists will find this place.
So if people want to find some of these concerts, I know that you share a lot on your Twitter feed, for example, or X, whatever we call it these days. But is there anywhere that these shows are listed besides the articles that you write? If people want to find them, they just have to go out and Google.
No, the problem is that you have to Google, you have to look for social media and find their Instagram or their Facebook or their whatever, which built like ghettos of, the people interested in cumbia have their ghetto, their tools to know where are these places. But if they would like to know about other music style, it's difficult. I think we as a city and every city in the world should have a place where 17-year-old guys, but also an 80-year-old couple could find the music venues they like to go, because music is something that you'll be enjoying from the very young age till you're very old. So if you want to go to an opera show, you should be able to a tour where you can find all this information. I think it's very difficult to find it nowadays,
which is ironic because there's more information available to us than ever. So there's no public funding of any kind that goes towards either supporting these more alternative formats or publicizing them or any kind of anything, no? Like some kind of centralized hub of information or various hubs of information or any kind of funding that these venues or these organizers have any access to? Because I know a lot of public funding goes to Primavera Sound and like gigantic macro festivals, which we will talk about in your books too. But what about this other aspect of the local cultural patrimony? Do they have any support at all?
I think the cultural politics in Spain and in Barcelona also are focused on helping the big be bigger instead of helping the small just to survive.
Right.
I don't want to romanticize these small venues where you can find a band playing for 40 people and finally getting 150 euros for them. I don't want to romanticize that. I think that most of them just survive because there's one person or two that decided that they want to have this stage and they want to let people play. But sometimes this doesn't give money. So sometimes the relationship between the musician and the bar owner is complicated because there's no money to be split. And I think the governments should understand that the only way to be sure that everybody has access to music is helping small venues to develop this job everywhere. Because if a city is going to be known just because of 2 festivals or 3 festivals where everybody goes, That's not enough. Music should happen all year. Live music should be accessible or had to be accessible to all kinds of pockets. Sometimes these big festivals are so expensive that many people, 95% of the city doesn't have access to all this. So my position is that the cultural politics should help the grassroots venues instead of putting the money in the big festivals. That's my way of seeing this.
That was one of my questions. Why does it matter? Why does it matter if there's a diversity of styles of live music, if there's different venues to go to, if there's different things to see? I mean, I know what I think as far as the answer to this question goes, but if you were going to speak to a politician and he said, okay, I'm thinking about it, I might direct some funding towards this, but why does this matter to the city? Yeah.
Because it's not just a cultural issue, it's a health issue, it's a social issue. We need places to meet. We need places to meet with people who think musically like us. We need places to meet with people that like other music, because when music sounds, when the beat's going, our heart starts beating with that beat, and you start beating at the same tempo than that guy that doesn't look like you, and that if you met him at the underground station, maybe you would think, that's a suspicious guy. But when the music sounds and you all smile to the same music, something breaks. That barrier breaks. And then you start thinking, I would share a beer with that guy. All of a sudden, just because of the music. It's difficult to explain, and more difficult in English, but there are chemical explanations for that feeling. For that feeling that you see somebody that you don't like, music starts playing, you like the music, his guy likes the music, and then you start liking that guy. And it doesn't have to do with drinking or drugs. It's just the beat that makes you connect. We need these spaces at a time where everybody's at home and everybody is suspicious about the other guy because the color of his skin. We're living at a time where we are suspicious about everything and about everyone, and we are scared. And these places where they just sell beers and play music, they are more important than the music being played in there. For me, it's like a pharmacy. We need a pharmacy every 3 blocks. We need a music venue every 3 blocks. That's what I like to imagine a city with music venues every 3 blocks. Every venue plays different music, so you can choose and you can understand the city. One thing I loved about writing those articles, I was born in Barcelona and I started doing these articles when I was 40 something. And it was surprising to discover that I didn't know my city at all. Going to those places and meeting all those people, those bands, those audiences, going to neighborhoods that I've never been to, that's when I started discovering my city. And I discovered my city through music. Music is the best way to understand the place where you're living.
It's like cultural glue, or like music as medicine. I love this idea. Yeah. So often live music in particular is seen as kind of like a more expensive version of watching YouTube or Netflix. It's like a luxury item. It's not seen as something that's necessary for the mental and emotional health of an individual or of a city. So I really like that explanation. Speaking of that, we talked about these macro festivals, and you wrote a book called Microfestivals, The Black Hole of Music, which I thought that was a pretty strong statement. So you just released your second book, kind of a companion book about microfestivals. So can the two things exist? Because we've seen so much macroization of events in these past few years, especially since the pandemic. Is there a way for both things to exist at one time?
Yeah, they both exist, but their lives are very different. I mean, big festivals move a lot of money. Sometimes they get a lot of money from private sponsors. Sometimes they get a lot of money from public administrations. There's a lot of money involved there. Small stages, small festivals that receive less people because they want to develop an experience which it's not for many people. I mean, a festival for 400 people doesn't have to explain why don't you have 20,000 people. 400 people sharing music and enjoying music from a live band that's playing on stage, it's enough. It's a reason enough. So sometimes these small experiences, these small festivals, they survive, but they survive through volunteering, self-precarization. I don't know if that word makes any sense.
No, but I know what you mean.
If you ask, can they both exist? Of course. But can a shark and small fishes exist in the same aquarium?
Only if the fish is lucky, you know?
only if the shark's not hungry.
Yeah.
But sharks are hungry. If they don't eat, they die. So the relationship sometimes is like that. small fishes trying to find a place where the shark is not looking. But going back to my obsession, going back to the public subvenciones, the public money. If administrations give more money to the shark than to the small fishes will never grow to be autonomous, to develop their business. All the money goes to the big shark. Big shark will get bigger and bigger, so the future of the small places will be in danger. So the free market capitalism makes the festivals be bigger and bigger and bigger, because if you stay at the same numbers every year, it seems like you're losing against the other one that's getting bigger. But if the public administrations also feed the shark, the match is over.
That's one interesting aspect of living in a socialist country that behaves like a capitalist country, because you would think that a super capitalist mindset would be the one that would feed the shark, and a socialist system would maybe feed the shark if it feels like it serves their interest, but it would also see value that goes beyond simply the economic accounts. But it doesn't seem like it works that way. So do you think that this is a global phenomenon, or do you feel like it's more specific to Spain and or Catalonia in terms of not seeing the value of these smaller venues?
I'm seeing pieces in newspapers from the UK or other places where they talk about small venues closing also. And the ones that are not closing are still alive because the owners ask their audience to give money, and sometimes they do. This sense of community finally has been proven when people say, okay, I put an extra money because I need you not to close this place. To be honest, the story in Spain has always been during Franco's dictatorship, culture was something that they didn't care. Franco didn't care about culture. So when democracy arrived, it seemed like culture could have another use. And during many years, the only use of culture was getting votes for the party that wanted to lead the country. So we spent many years where the government, when they wanted to win elections, they said, okay, free concert here, free concert there for the Fiesta Mayor, for the public celebrations. The biggest and best Spanish band was playing everywhere just because they wanted the young voters to say, okay, you brought this band here, okay, I'll vote you. Now, it seems like the only way to prove that culture or music is useful is money. You put up a big festival, lots of people come, spend money, and that city gets richer. From that point of view, it just makes sense that the governments from different places in Spain put money to the big one, because that big one will bring more money, more tourists or more listeners to that festival. Until politicians understand that culture and music is useful for more than, which is this social part or this even health part, what I was trying to say before, this won't be solved. The equation is, I will put more money in the big one because the big one will get me more money.
Well, it's good that there are people who talk about these things, like you, for example, to try to at least put that perspective out there. And along that line, I do want to talk about your new book, not only to promote your book, which of course is important, but also because I think that it's covering some really important information that people don't necessarily have access to or don't know where to find. So in this book about micro festivals, you're talking about not only mini festivals and alternative venues all over the country, but also the people who put them on, why they put them on, how long they've been doing it, and sometimes if someone else has taken over an event after it's been going for years, and getting families involved in all these things. So how did you find all these places? I mean, it's not the same as you go on the internet, you look up where is Korea, no? Did you just drive around the country and find these people?
Well, if you want to write a book about small festivals, you have to ask musicians.
Right.
So it's that easy. And through the years, I've been asking musicians, tell me about a small festival you felt comfortable, very well received. I was taking notes, and sometimes I went there. Also wanted to write about micro festivals with very different styles that sometimes I don't know much about. So I had to ask a friend that plays in a reggae band, you know, interesting places where reggae festivals happen and that treat people well. Then he told me a story about that small festival up near Galicia at a small village with, 60 person living there, telling me a nice story that I thought that story must be told. Why? Because when I put that title, Microfestivales, the black hole of music, that black hole, sometimes it's also a black hole of information, because all journalists talk about the big things, and nobody talks about the small things. And these small festivals are not the alternative of the big festivals. These small gatherings, these small places where music happens, is something that has happened during centuries and centuries and centuries. Macrofestivals are the new thing. The new thing is not meeting 300 guys playing a bandurria, a very local type of guitar in Valladolid. That's not a new thing. This is something that's been happening for years and years and years and years. So I wanted to show and prove that there are interesting places, interesting people that understand that they need this meeting place. This meeting place being once a year, or this meeting place being once a month or once a week. There are a lot of people that feel this need. And then they think, if the government is not opening a venue where we can meet every week, we have to do it. And they do it. And sometimes they've been doing it for 4 decades without any kind of help. And that's heroic. But this is also sad that they have to spend their time and money without a net. They can lose money, and sometimes they're also at the point of failing, of saying enough, I can't go on more years. That's where the public money should go, to make all these small things survive without that extra effort that makes them be always on the cuerda floja. Es que no me sale.
There's not really a word in English for this, but the precariousness of doing anything that's not mainstream within the music world or the culture world in general. We could be talking about circus or theater, anything that's kind of not in the mainstream. There's an economic precariousness that comes along with it that, as you said, kind of life or death at some point. It's not the cliche of a musician or a festival guy like hanging out at home and having a party and not really working. It's more like these people work so hard and they still can't get a break.
Yeah, and when I went to Balboa, which is the small town, 60 people village where this reggae festival happened, I met the mayor, the one who used to be a mayor in the 70s, because he is the person who started doing a small festival in San Juan. They put up a small festival in June, at the end of June, and I asked him, why you started doing this in the 80s? And he said, because if we don't meet around music, around theater, around something cultural, we will die. This village, everybody's leaving this village because there's no job here. So the ones who are staying here, if we don't do something, we'll end up the same. So they rebuilt a small house, and then they started doing concerts every 15 days, every 2 weeks in a 60-person town. Then they started doing that festival. Then people saw that festival and said, why don't we do another festival, but this one with folk music from Galicia? Okay, just do it. Why don't we do a blues festival? We'll do it. Why don't we do a electronic festival? Why don't we do a brass band music festival? Do it. So that small village has like 11 different festivals through the year. One of those is that reggae festival. But when I went to know that reggae festival, I discovered this kind of Shangri-La of small festivals. So all these examples I talk about in my book are examples of people that need culture, needs music, and they manage to make it happen. It could be flamenco. Peñas flamencas are the most do-it-yourself example you can find in Spain. Before the do-it-yourself term was coined, it goes back to the 60s. It's more independent than the indie scene. It's more punk than the punk scene. It's in the 60s, during the Franco dictatorship. These are people that want to preserve flamenco music, and then they start shows in the back of houses or stores for 20 people, and then it grows, and Peñas flamencas start happening in every small town. That was something that was made just to preserve music and to have this space where people can enjoy music and can feel this music together.
Mm-hmm. I'm happy that you wrote about this. You know that I am a musician and I am a music fan, but there are all kinds of people out there who aren't musicians, but that love music, and it's such a big part of their life. For every human, music is a part of their life, I think, but some people so passionate about it who would love to know this stuff, but they wouldn't even know where to look. So thank you very much for writing this book and for putting this out there. It is in Spanish, so if any of you watching don't speak Spanish, you'll have to call me and ask what it's about. But it's a good reason to learn Spanish, right? It's so important to showcase or highlight what makes us human, you know, the things that bring us together as a community, as people. And this book and the people you talk about in it and the events that they put on is a big part of that. I really appreciate you talking to me in this interview, and just for myself, thank you for writing the book.
Thank you. I hope it made sense what I said.
You're always so interesting, and I just feel like people will watch this and they'll feel better about life. So really, thank you. Thank you very much, Nando, for starting the year off with me on the Metropolitan Culture Corner. I enjoyed that so much. The idea of music, of art, of culture as medicine, as this tie that binds us all together as a community and not just as a form of passing the time or entertainment. I love that idea. Thank you so much, Nando. Good luck with your book, and I will be staying tuned for your next one. And to all of our Metropolitan Culture Corner readers, watchers, listeners, remember that you can catch up on all the interviews that we've done over the past 5, almost 6 years now, oh my goodness, on the Barcelona Metropolitan website, on its official YouTube channel. And you can listen to all of these interviews with actors, directors, photographers, chefs, designers, psychologists, all these really interesting people. You can listen to them in the form of a podcast on SoundCloud. Thank you for tuning in, and see you next month.